As the 2023 NFL rookie draft approaches here in April, we are putting out as much rookie content as we can for you guys so we can really dig into these prospects, give you as much information as you need to make good picks in your Dynasty rookie drafts. Please make sure you like this video and subscribe if you haven't already. It's a real easy and free way to support our channel. Let's get into it. Let's talk about Anthony Richardson today, who is really, I would say, is definitely the most polarizing prospect going into this rookie class. A QB that clearly, as Avery and I have established before, he has the highest ceiling. He has a higher ceiling than Stroud. He has a higher ceiling than Young, but he's just not as safe. His college production is incredibly questionable. I mean, we're talking 2,549 passing yards, 327 passing attempts, 17 passing touchdowns, and 9 interceptions, but 654 rushing yards. His athleticism is unquestioned. He is very, very raw, very underdeveloped, however. But I mean, at the combine, it just became even more clear how high his ceiling could be with literally breaking the combine. The best QB prospect we've seen since Cam Newton, 6'4", 244 pounds, a 4.43 40-yard dash. But we don't have to keep repeating this. You guys all know this. So we are going to dive into some of the possible landing spots for Anthony Richardson. I'm going to list 4 teams mainly where there's been a lot of mock drafts that have put him there on those landing spots, talk about the pros and cons of each and my personal ideal destination. But let's talk about the most possible option out there right now, and that is the Carolina Panthers. They have the freedom of picking whomever they choose at the 101 after trading up for a king's ransom with the Chicago Bears. With the Panthers, honestly, the first argument you're going to hear about why he could go there is because they had Cam Newton. And Anthony Richardson has been compared to Cam Newton because of his combine numbers, because of his athleticism, his size, his passing capabilities. I personally think this is a relevant argument for why he could go to Carolina. I don't think it's the end-all, be-all. I don't think it's exactly the most logical conclusion that you could come to, especially since there's a whole nother front office. There's a whole different coaching staff in Carolina. And I think Frank Reich, as Colts fans, knowing who he is, it seems more possible that they're going to go with the safer options at QB as prospects, and that's Bryce Young or CJ Stroud. Anthony Richardson is a project. He's a project quarterback. He's probably going to have to sit for at least, I would assume, half of the season, maybe even a whole season, to really get used to this NFL offense and to build off a lot of raw tools that he had in college. I don't think with the receiving core, which is currently nothing, with the exception, I guess, of signing Thielen just recently in free agency, but it's just not the ideal spot for a young, undeveloped QB to develop. Yeah, they signed Miles Sanders to a 4-year deal. Yeah, they signed Adam Thielen. Yeah, they might bring in DJ Chark. That's just not an ideal offense that I want Anthony Richardson to be in. I think CJ Stroud or Bryce Young would be a much more capable prospects in QBs that are more, how do I say this? I guess well-rounded as talents to be able to go into a situation that isn't ideal and really make something out of it in their career, not be hurt because of it. So those are, I guess, the 2 arguments that you have for Richardson to the Panthers is really the Cam Newton and the fact that he has the highest ceiling. The next option here, the next landing spot, is the Houston Texans. I think this is obviously at the 102. Really, really like the new head coach there in D'Amico Ryans. They just lose Brandon Cooks to free agency. I think they traded him, actually. That doesn't really concern me whatsoever. I think the Texans have a long way to go before they compete, and the moves that they've made at the QB position of recent kind of show that if they draft a QB, they probably will be flexible in letting their QB develop and maybe even sit for a while. So I think this is maybe a more possible option for Anthony Richardson to land into with a receiving core that is young, doesn't have a ton going for him right now, but they do have John Mechie and Nico Collins, who are intriguing NFL wide receivers, and I would assume they draft another one in the second or third round. With Anthony Richardson there, again, this is one that I probably wouldn't prefer. I think D'Amico Ryans is going to be comfortable with whatever QB is behind center there this next season. I think he's going to start by really building on the defensive side of the ball and building a solid team around whatever QB they bring in there within the next year or two. Do I think it's possible the Texans draft a defensive player like Will Anderson at the 102? Yeah, I do think it's possible. And that really just depends on what the NFL thinks about these 4 QB prospects this season. I think that has yet to be seen, but the Texans are absolutely a possible landing spot for Anthony Richardson. And I think there's not really many concerns I would have with him going there. One of the common landing spots that's become more and more popular with the Steichen hiring in Indianapolis is the Indianapolis Colts. And this is really probably, if you're talking a guy that could come in there and really be utilized in a proper way and can be developed while he's playing on the field, is going to be the Indianapolis Colts. I mean, they have Jonathan Taylor, they have Michael Pittman, they have Alec Pierce, they have a fine tight end room. Their offensive line, while underperformed last season, is still very talented and will be better this season. So he'll have the protection, he'll have the time. In Steichen's offense, they're just not going to ask much of Anthony Richardson if he goes there. I think they'll really run more of a 6-back style offense with Anthony Richardson in Indianapolis. And Steichen, with his resume of developing Justin Herbert, developing Jalen Hurts, and working with Phillip Rivers before all of that, I think he's very capable of taking a athletically talented, and for all we know, a good quality character prospect in Anthony Richardson and take him to that next level where he can really go over the top and become a very good to even elite NFL quarterback. So those are sort of my thoughts on the Colts landing spot. Another popular landing spot is going to be the Lions. I think going here, they've got the 107, I believe, is their pick. And this would be a very intriguing landing spot. Obviously, if Anthony Richardson goes here, he's probably going to fall in your rookie drafts because no one's going to be expecting him to play day one, and no one's going to be expecting him to play year one. Jared Goff has done a phenomenal job in Detroit, and while they just missed out on the playoffs, their offense is loaded, and they're coming next season. Rodgers is no longer in Green Bay. That division is up for grabs, and the Lions just are the most talented overall. I think whoever they start next season at the QB position is going to do well, and Jared Goff has a good handle on that offense. Is he a long-term option that's really going to put the Lions over the top and become even contenders in the NFC? I don't think so. You're talking about a free pick that the Lions got from the Rams for that Matt Stafford trade. It's literally a free pick. What do they have to lose? They've already built their offense, one of what is looking to be one of the most elite offenses in the NFL. And to put Anthony Richardson into that equation, you are talking about a top 5, one of the most terrifying offenses in the NFL. It's going to take him a while to develop. It's a really good landing spot looking down the road, but don't expect him to start day one. I think overall, if I were to pick my favorite landing spot, I go back and forth really between the Colts and the Lions, but I think you have to go with the Colts as my favorite landing spot for Anthony Richardson. And this is not me just being a homer, but this is really because he just has a higher chance of starting year one and making an immediate impact in your dynasty leagues to contend and in super flex leagues. So with the Lions, again, he's going to have to wait a while and wait his turn until they decide to move on from Jared Goff. So that would be my ideal landing spot for Anthony Richardson. And let's finish out this video just with talking about the market value of Anthony Richardson depending on where he lands. I mean, he may even go somewhere where I didn't even have him on this list. The NFL draft is crazy. Anything could happen. Anyone could trade up. Anyone could think that AR is it and take him at 101, even trade up with the Panthers. So I think I'm very, very hesitant to say that the market value of a player who has elite upside should be impacted really in any way, depending on where they land. If Anthony Richardson falls outside of the top 10, that's when I would say that his market value should be negatively impacted. If he goes to any of these 4 options, however, in the top 10, the Panthers, the Texans, the Colts, the Lions, I really don't see his real true value, in my opinion, being negatively impacted in any way unless it's the Lions. And again, this is just going back to the fact that he's going to have to sit if he goes to Detroit. I could see that possibly feeding into, but again, I mean, if he goes there, that's also the most promising offense. So maybe his market value stays the same or even goes up. I mean, we saw what happened with Trey Lance's landing spot to San Francisco. Everyone knew he wasn't starting year 1. Everyone questioned if he would start year 2. And then he gets hurt, and he still has top 3 rounds of Dynasty startup market value right now just because of what they invested in him and his ceiling. He has rushing upside. He has a good arm. If they develop him well in that Shanahan offense, he could be an elite option. I think the same thing happens with Anthony Richardson. So I guess I'll take that back. If he goes to the Lions, I think his market value goes up. I think if he goes to the Panthers, there's going to be a lot of talks about saying AR is the next Cam Newton. Do you really see that happening right off the bat with that offense? I get they've made some moves in free agency, but I just don't really see it. Houston, though, ultimately is probably going to be the one where I'd be least excited just because of the trajectory of the Houston Texans over the next few years. Yes, they do have a lot of draft picks, a lot of first-round picks because of Deshaun Watson, but I just like the 6-back offensive style that Steichen has in Indianapolis. I like the offensive talent overall that they would have around Anthony Richardson in Detroit. And the funny thing about this is I really think that of these 4 teams, the Panthers would be the team where I would be least excited about him going. And I honestly think his market value could be negatively impacted. Yes, you see all the Cam Newton comps, but I mean, what is he going to do in that offense? We saw what Fields did his first couple seasons. Yes, he was a QB1 this last year, but he has a lot of question marks, and it's because his offense was so bad. I mean, Anthony Richardson, who is even more raw than Justin Fields was as a prospect, like, what is he going to do in that Carolina offense? I don't know. It's something definitely to think about. Please let me know what you think about that in the comments, what your ideal landing spot is. If there's any teams that I left out of this that you think are possible suitors for Anthony Richardson, please put it all in the comments. We'd love to respond. Love hearing your takes on these things. As always, thanks for watching, and we'll see you later.